We have invited our roundtable panel to weigh in on the stories in 2019 that had a significant impact on African Americans. We're going to look at the historic impeachment of President Trump and what we can expect from the Democratic Party in the 2020 election. Plus, we'll talk about the impact of the Black Lives Matter and Me Too movements on African Americans and women. And we'll take a closer look at the status of the racial divide in technology and our ever-growing dependence on smartphones. But let's start with the impeachment of President Donald Trump. He is just the third president in U.S. history to face trial in the Senate, which will determine whether he is going to be removed from office less than a year before he stands for re-election. Let's bring in my roundtable guests, political strategist and writer Kim Trent, communications specialist Karen Dumas, Kerry Leon Jackson, also known as the Urban Conservative, and Brandon Brice, who is host of Straight Talk on 910 AM Superstation. Welcome, all of you.
Thanks for having us.
Black Journal. All right, let's start with the president being impeached. This idea that he has crossed the line and shouldn't be the president anymore. The House Democrats said that's true. Kerry Leon Jackson, I'll start with you, the Urban Conservative.
Let me tell you, I was always raised to believe that if you tell a lie, you're going to be struck by lightning. And somehow lightning didn't find its way into the Capitol in D.C. during the hearing because over and over again, every Republican that stood up covered for the lie. Now, it's very, very clear. If you say, I'm going to hold up $400 million until you do something favorable to me, not something favorable to the country or favorable to NATO or anything like that, but if you do something favorable to me, which is find some dirt on my political opponent, until you give me that money, I'm going to hold that up on money and weapons and you won't get it. That is clear extortion.
It's extortion.
So for everyone to sit around, all of the Republicans, to sit around and say, he never committed a crime. What's the crime? What's the crime? They know what the crime is. They simply have decided we're no longer going to represent Americans. We're going to represent Donald Trump. The thing is, as I drove out here today, the one thing that I noticed is that we've got a stoplight on every corner. And the only reason that those things work and that we're not driving through all of them is because we all have agreed that we're going to follow some rules. Donald Trump and those current Republicans who are in D.C. have all said, we don't care about the rules. We're going to do what we want to do.
And yet I saw a poll recently that showed still 15% of African-American men support this president. There's only 3% of African-American women, but among whites, he's much higher. Black women have it right, but why can't we get people to say
a couple things?
Enough?
This president is, and I think we have to look in context, he's a person who understands how to use the media. I mean, right now we've had 3 presidents that I believe have been impeached, none have been removed, and quite frankly, people are saying, listen, let the voters decide next November. Why are we taking away the people's vote? Now, here's the thing. Part of that has to be, look, we're looking at, okay, even if now that he's impeached in the House, it's got to go to the Senate. And the Senate has said day one, it's a roasted chicken. And so I think we've got to look at the facts. If Democrats want to remove the president, run a good candidate. Run a good candidate. And quite frankly, you ain't got nobody right now.
Is there a point to standing up and saying, all right, we're going to have the election next year, but this behavior is across the line, and we're going to say
this is a man who just in the last couple of weeks was just fined $2 million because of other malfeasance that he's engaged in. Right. This man, there are probably a good 15 or 20 other things he could have been impeached for. I think the Democratic Party has demonstrated tremendous restraint. Unfortunately, this was a bridge too far. And I don't understand how anyone who loves this country, who loves the rule of law, who loves the idea of having a president who has an ounce of integrity can in any way defend this human being, particularly after that horrible thing he did with our United States congressman, longest serving congressman in the history of this country, to suggest that he was in hell. There's no floor for this guy. He is the absolute worst person.
Let me simplify it. Donald Trump is a clown, and he has turned this country into a circus. His popularity numbers continue to soar because, unfortunately, the more foolish that you are, the more excited some people seem to get. Outside of the time that it's costing, the money that it's costing, the political capital, I'm interested in the moral capital that this country is paying for having this man serve as president.
I don't know how we come back.
Exactly. He has been divisive. and it has been a distraction from the issues that everybody else should be talking about outside of the foolishness that he does every day.
Yeah. So looking into 2020, which candidate do we think would be best to unseat the president? But also, which candidate do we think African Americans should or maybe could get excited
Stephen,
about?
I think you got really one candidate so far who has put themselves out. If we want to talk about winning, it's really Bloomberg. One, he's the only guy that can really compete financially.
That is not what I expected you to say.
No. Well, here's the thing. There's who I like and there's who can win.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be the question is he's the guy that compete and it's name recognition. You're not going to beat this president on what you call good policy.
So you think President Stop and Frisk is the way to go?
I think the right way to look at it is who's got the name recognition and who can win and who's got
that
the
is
name
really
recognition.
tragic. That's tragic.
I mean, that's
a tragic way for our democracy to function, that we just say, this is not a 12th grade prom
You think Senator
election.
Booker's going to beat?
This is the
that's
presidency of the United States.
You think Cory Booker's going to
I
beat
think that
Donald
he's
Trump?
listen, I think
I didn't say
anybody
is he
who
a
has
better
a D
candidate. I
after
said, can
his
he
name
win?
is my candidate. His or her
The only
name is
candidate
my
that's
candidate,
going to
period.
win, the only one that's going to bring out the number of people that are going to be required. You've got to match what happened in 2018.
Right.
It's going to be Joe Biden. None of the black community is never. They'd line up behind Mayor Pete before they're going to line up behind Bloomberg.
Behind Mike Bloomberg,
If
yeah. I
Bloomberg
think
can
that's a
spend as
hard
much
sell with
money
black folks.
as he wants on commercials and put as many black faces in those commercials as he wants, everybody's going to remember.
None of
he
those
was-
candidates,
No, but,
Stephen, can win.
but I
And that's
think
the
ahead,
I
Kerry.
agree, and I've said this before, that if in fact, but they have to leave Joe Biden alone. Joe Biden is an older gentleman, and so he does things
So
that
is
may
Donald
be
Trump.
misinterpreted.
Same here.
But I'm thinking that he is, if he's allowed to be himself, it's going to be like a playground, like a scrap in a playground, and Joe Biden can go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. I really believe that.
I don't think. I mean, I think Joe Biden is essentially what you get right now. I mean, right now, the old white male in
Except for
America,
he's a
people.
decent person.
Hold on. But we're talking about who can win. I think. I'll tell you, on the right side. I mean, I even kind of like Pete Buttigieg just because he's a conservative Democrat that actually has executive leadership. He's been a mayor. He's run a budget.
Running South Bend is kind of like running
it's
the
still- it's still
7-Eleven,
the
but
principle.
whatever.
It's still the principle.
He does
It's
not
still the
have
principle.
any, and he has
Senators
not yet
don't
made
run-
peace with the
senators
African
don't
Americans
run
that are in his own
administrations.
city.
Who are in his own
Senators
city.
just vote.
So Kim, who's your candidate for next year? Anybody with a
Whoever-
D? But
At
in the
this point-
primary, I mean, you get to choose twice, right?
You know what? I think we have an embarrassment of riches, actually, because I think that we have. If you want someone who is extremely progressive, you've got Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. If you want someone who's more conservative, you have Cory Booker, who I think actually in the debates, I think he's kind of, to me, I think he's been an unsung hero of the debate.
Yeah.
I think he's been substantive.
He can't
I
seem to
think,
get people
but for
excited.
whatever reason, people aren't on
Getting
board with
excited,
him.
yeah.
But I think that I think we have several people. We have a deep bench
You
in my
need a
view.
candidate that people are on board with.
You need a candidate that can
He's gotta
actually
turn
win,
out the
can
vote.
win.
and can raise
All
the
right.
money.
And it's not just about what they're bringing politically to the table. You do have to get people excited. You do have to get people engaged, and you have to make sure that your platform resonates with a variety of citizens across the
You've got
country.
to get a lot of
yeah, you
pretty
do.
broad
It's not
base.
just
Okay. As usual, we're going over time with the subject, but that's okay. Yeah, that's why I have you guys here.